to the calculations provided for those 5 dwellings. So, yes, it would meet the requirements of the local lead flood authority.
Okay, I can't see any more hands, so I do have a question myself, just as a member of the committee. It does bring us back to the housing need. That, I mean, yes, there is no contribution for affordable housing, but when we're looking at the housing types, and I think this may be one for Mrs. Riag, as to do these meet the identified housing need within Tavistock? I'm not sure if this is, I think it probably is for, yeah. Oh, of Miss Baker possibly then, rather than dropping Mrs. Riag in, it's the affordable. I'll let you two sort it out between you as to which of you wishes to respond to that one. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Chair. The evidence base in terms of how we understand open market need doesn't break down really to this level. As I think as Mr. Kitching has already pointed out, it comprises a mix in terms of a number of bedrooms. That broadly accords with the Schmanar evidence that we've got for West Devon in terms of dwellings by bedroom number. So I think, you know, in terms of as far as we can go with regard to a site this size and recognising that the evidence base is collated at a borough level, I think, as Mr. Kitching has pointed out, he's of the view that there is a sufficient mix within the scheme that he's comfortable that it meets the policy.
Thank you. Any more questions from members? Okay, we will move on then to the speakers. So I should like to invite, I'll get my glasses in focus. First speaker is Mr. Chris Beelsley, who is an objector. Thank you. If you'd like to come forward and hopefully you remember, as I said earlier, so I don't need to repeat it. Thank you very much. Thank you. There's a button on the side that you need to press in before you press that. That just turns the power on, basically. That's it. And then there's a talk button on the front that when you're ready to go do, you will have 3 minutes. Mrs. Hall will be the timekeeper. If you've not finished at the end of your time, I will need to interrupt you just to ask you to wind up, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Christopher Beasley. I'm a retired architect and resident of Brook Lane. I've been requested to speak to you today to provide a voice on behalf of the residents from our area objecting to the proposal. Our objection falls into 2 areas: the impact of yet another residential scheme in Brook Lane and the impact on the wider area. Focusing on Brook Lane, a new development of 23 houses is including affordable homes, is now under construction. Together with the earlier housing development of Philpott Lane, the application will add to the pressure on Brook Lane. With these additional proposed houses comes an increase in traffic and a very real threat to road safety along and at the junction with Plymouth Road. Pressure on infrastructure, school and health provision are all a concern and need to be addressed. The adopted joint local plan and its policy TTV 17 states the application site, together with the Linden Home site, when combined, are to provide a mixed use of residential employment. The application is clearly shown for employment use, which begs the question as to why residential is being considered when it is at odds with the adopted plan. The applicant has stated there is a need for housing in Tavistock. This is wrong. West Devon has more than 5 years' supply of housing land, and the local plan allocation for Tavistock has already been met. We are aware that whilst the application is principally for new dwellings for open market, none are available for affordable homes and will be no benefit to Tavistock. With the acute shortage of affordable homes, then there, at the very least, there should be a minimum of 30% provision. Moving on to the wider area, our objection centres around the policy TTV 17, which forms part of the adopted joint local plan and its application. As residents, our understanding of this policy, both in text and plan illustration defined by colour for clarity, indicates that the proposed site, the northern element, is part of TTV 17, and the text confirms that the site is, and I quote, principally for new employment uses, predominantly use class B. Our concern is that West Devon Borough Council and its officers appear not to be following the adopted joint local plan and instead follow a pathway that the Planning Act requires that the determination must be made in accordance with the
30
development
seconds.
plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. No compelling evidence of material consideration has been fully demonstrated. The outline application for the commercial land component is identical in area to the extra care scheme, 0.76 hectare. The limited information shown for the scheme is considerably less than the extra care design. What is provided indicates a single large unit, 2,500 square metres, 50 car parking spaces, including 4 disabled.
Could I ask you to wind up, please, because your time is up. So if
Okay.
you finish your last sentence, thank you.
Okay. Basically, as far as the scheme is concerned, I believe the design that's currently shown is inadequate and needs to be rethought.
Okay, thank you. If you just hold tight a minute and see if any members have any questions for you. Members, any questions for Mr. Beasley? No, it appears not. So thank you. It might be helpful actually if you just take your, if you turn the button off at the front, just take it back with you and then you can bring it forward when you do. Yeah, so thank you. Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Graham Hutton, who I understand is representing the applicant. So again, I think you heard the drill, so I won't repeat it. Okay, when you're ready, make a start. You'll need to bring the microphone down a little bit towards you. Thank you.
Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. Well, good morning. I'm Graham Hutton, the Development Director at Baker Estates, the applicant for both schemes before you today. I appreciate that the applications are controversial, and I thought, therefore, it might be helpful to reflect on the planning system through which you're making your decision today, that being a plan-led, evidence-based system. Taking that plan-led part first, the site is part of TTV 17 of the local plan, and that allocation is for mixed-use delivery requiring the delivery of both homes and employment with equal weight. It is also not prescriptive in terms of numbers or distribution across the allocation as a whole, as we've heard. Considering the evidence-based part, it's fair to say that the burden of proof is with us as the applicant to demonstrate to your officers and consultees that the development proposals are compliant, and that we've achieved in all aspects, be it highways, transport, ecology, landscape impact, etc. And this is a high hurdle to have cleared and has resulted in the recommendation for approval. It's easy in this forum to hear unsubstantiated, unevidenced claims, and we've heard some, which seek to question the evidence base and indeed the basis of the allocation. And such claims should not carry weight and have been discounted by officers because they're wrong. As Mr. Fairburn suggested, wording has been cherry-picked by objectors, and it's even been claimed that some of that this part of the allocation is only for 18,000 square metres of employment, which is entirely incorrect. And it's also been claimed that housing delivery is not required, despite the inspector's clear support of the need for when the allocation was made. What is true, however, is that our proposals comply with the plan, they're deliverable, and are fully evidence-based with a Section 106 package supported by officers. Whilst approval is sought in detail for the homes, I think it's important to understand why the employment is proposed in outline only. It is far better to seek outline rather than detail because the use class of EG is so wide, from offices through to R&D to industrial, and to ensure delivery, the building should be tailored to the end user. The use class is not just for industrial sheds, as some may have portrayed. Having said this, it is critical at this stage to demonstrate that buildings of an appropriate scale could fit on the land that is set aside, and this we have done, and officers are satisfied that the land can accommodate the buildings and the parking in an appropriate manner. And it's worth pointing out that the floor area of an office building would be significantly larger than that of a shed. Of course, in the end, it's delivery that matters, and our track record at Baker Estates is just that. We have, for example, followed through on our commitments to deliver commercial land through reserve matters on our land in Dartmouth, and we also
30
continue
seconds.
to deliver high-quality homes, which, as I said, are required in equal weight. Therefore, I urge you to vote to approve our application today because it accords with the local plan, it is supported by your experts, and will be delivered for the community. It is also well-designed and will provide a mix of sustainable bungalows, which are hugely underrepresented in the area. Beyond that, I thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Moyes and Councillor Mott.
Yes, why did you have a horseshoe shaped? Because it seems that the people on the up by the main entrance will have loads of cars trailing past them all day.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Moyes. It's to do with the gradient of the land, in that simply to get from the lowest point to the highest point at a gradient which is suitable and appropriate for Devon County Council highway design, and one which pedestrians and pushchairs and the like could navigate easily, you need the length of road to gently take out that level difference. There is a footpath, if I may point to it here, and the dark areas on that footpath represent steps. So there's a shorter path down through the site for those that are able-bodied and can manage the steps, but the route around is necessary because of the levels on the site.
And my apologies, I just called you Mr. Beasley instead of Mr. Hutton. I apologise to both parties. Couldn't do anything worse, I don't think. Councillor Mott.
Thank you. So a repeat of my previous question as to an indication on how many of the properties will have solar panels fitted.
I think the reality of the answer to that is virtually all of them. What's critical is that we need to demonstrate compliance with policy Dev 32 of your local plan, which requires a 20% improvement upon building regulations. And there's a number of ways to achieve that, and a good component of it will be solar panels on the roofs. I would just point out that new government building regulations, which come into effect from June of 2022, so 7 months away, require a 31% improvement. So we're going to be significantly ahead of Dev 32. You'll notice on the plan, which is on the screen, that some of the roofs which are south-facing have roof windows. The 2.5-storey unit does, and some of the chalet bungalows have some roof windows, which limits the amount of solar voltaics on those particular homes, in which case those individual homes are designed with greater thermal efficiency in other ways, be it through fabric efficiency in windows. But they will all still have solar panels on those with roof windows. It will be very extensive. Does that answer the question? I'm not trying to be sheepish on it. There is a condition, I did check the number slightly earlier, but I've forgotten it. I'm sure Mr. Kitchen would, that requires us to submit all of that evidence to demonstrate compliance with policy Dev 32 as a condition before we start on site. But there will be a lot of solar panels on the site. Yeah,
I did look down through the material submitted. I'm just surprised that it's not actually indicated on the plan as to which properties would have them.
Simply because I think that by the time that this development gets to site, we will be looking to comply with the new building regulations, which are substantively ahead of Dev 32, and it would seem therefore abortive to design it in detail now, but it will be a lot of solar panels.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is regarding the retaining wall on the development of bungalow or properties, proposed development. Can you give me an indication of the construction, and to what depth will the foundations be?
Yeah, so the proposal which is in the application before you is for a type of retaining wall which is called a root lock wall. Now this is a gravity retaining wall system, and it is effectively formed from bags which are seeded, full of a soil and aggregate material, and tied with a geotextile back to a long way, sort of 4 or 5 meters back behind the wall, so it acts as a big gravity retaining structure. Now, what is critical for us in selling homes is that homes have an NHBC warranty, which is based upon a 60-year design life. The retaining wall here will be designed around a 100-year design life, albeit we would expect it to last considerably longer than that. So it's a mass gravity wall. As Mr. Kitchen said, it would be green on its face. We've used these on a number of other developments. They're an attractive thing to look at. They'd be conveyed within the ownership of the properties so that there's rights to maintain and everything that's necessary there. Your colleague, Councillor Vachon, mentioned about the soakaways. Yeah. Oh, apologies. I didn't appreciate that. Can you all hear me better now? Apologies for that. Right. Do you need me to repeat that answer at all?
Could you?
It's called a root lock wall, right? Which is ROOTLOK on the end, root lock wall. And it's an approved gravity retaining structure. It's used extensively. It's attractive to look at. It helps with biodiversity because of its green nature, and it's very low maintenance and has a long design life. The soakaways, as I was just going to come on to Mr. Councillor Vachon's question there, the soakaways need to be 5 metres away from a home, but you can see that the length of those gardens on the upper side are very significant, so that those soakaways will be into natural ground level, a considerable way back from where the retaining wall face is, which is why, as Mr. Kitchen said, the lead local flood authority were happy.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you. Could I have supplementary, please?
Oh, right.
What you indicated that they have a 60-year life. What happens if they fail before that? Does that come down on the homeowner's insurance?
Anything which failed before that will be covered by the insurance-backed guarantee.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Southcott.
Yes. Within the design you've got there, you're saying you're putting solar cells on the roofs. What provision are you putting in for electric cars and basic heating in the estate?
So we would be putting gas infrastructure in, which is a hot topic at the moment, and I could bore you all for hours about sustainability of homes, but I think it's important that gas infrastructure goes in, because one day in the future it may be that hydrogen is available everywhere. So it's important to have that infrastructure. After 2025, I'm certain that we'll be building with air source heat pumps more regularly, but I still believe that infrastructure should be there. The critical thing is to make homes energy efficient so that they don't use much energy, which is what we call a fabric first approach. So making sure that the walls, the roofs, the windows, the doors and all that are super efficient, which we'll be doing. Does that answer that question appropriately?
Yes. What about the provision for
car chargers? Sorry, yes. Once again, there's a condition requiring us to use electrical car chargers across here. Every South Hams District, West Devon Borough Council and your combined joint local plan have a policy for car chargers. This month, in fact, this week, the government are going to be announcing Building Regulations Part S, which will come into effect next June, requiring every new home to have electrical car chargers. So, cutting straight to the chase, yes, every home will have a fast electrical car charger, which means at least 7 kilowatt, the fastest you can get on a single-phase electric.
It is actually outlined in condition 35 as well within that. Councillor Ewings.
I wasn't going to ask my question on that sort of subject because I wasn't sure it was, because it says under full conditions. But are your properties, particularly two-bedroom bungalows, etc., will they be having wet rooms as opposed to a bath room?
So you define a wet room as?
A shower, that a walk-in that you just walk straight in. You can take a wheelchair into it. Because we get a lot of houses that as soon as they're built, we get applied to turn it into a wet room.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I've often defined bungalows as being lifetime homes without being lifetime homes, as it were, which is a policy definition that many of you will be familiar with in the past and has now got a different definition. The bungalows that we produce and the chalet bungalows all have a master bedroom on the ground floor, all with an ensuite bathroom, all with a shower in it, which is a floor level shower tray. But it does typically, in our standard home, have a kind of 2-inch lip on it in relation to the floor. So they're not designed as wheelchair compatible units as standard. I mean, it's relatively easy to convert them as such, but there's equally no requirement in policy terms for that. So they're designed as standard building regulations from that point of view. But of course, they're very easily adaptable because the master bedroom and ensuite are on the ground floor.
Okay, so just one from me, because the allocation is for mixed-use land, and I can't see this in the report, so I think the answer is probably no. But has any consideration been given to these units being live-work units?
The homes being live-work units. No is the short answer for that. The type and style of the homes has been somewhat dictated by the levels on the site and the ability to secure appropriate parking arrangements and the like. But
That's
no.
okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Any, Councillor Leach.
Yes, I'd go back to the, excuse me, retaining wall or bank. Any water that builds up behind that bank, is it supposed to percolate through it? Or is there some form of drainage system which takes the excess water, especially if they find that there's some springs underground in that, especially with the topography? Is it just the banks that are going to let this water through?
I'm back on. Yes, I'm happy to answer that. So it's kind of both, if I'm honest. The way that these walls are constructed is that they have a gravel trench, which is about 3 foot, 900 millimetres wide behind them, which acts as a land drain. So any water percolating across through the land would hit that and go down into the soil below. But similarly, because it's a green bank, it is permeable on the front, so you wouldn't get hydraulic pressure behind it and it could come through. The soil on this site is unusually permeable, yeah? And given that we're in a critical drainage area, which was one of the first things we learned in the pre-app, it's very important to make sure that we work with the county to make sure that there's plenty of room for the soakaways to go away. And it is very, very permeable, and the water will go away. And I'm certain it won't be coming through the front of the bank.
Okay, Councillor Vachon.
Thank you, Chair. Was any consideration prior to the 106 agreements put into affordable housing for this site at all?
This site and the applications in plural which are before you today have had a very long gestation period coming from pre-application advice, I think, which was probably 3 years ago, if I'm honest, that we've been working on it. It's always been very clear that because it's a small site with attracting a significant number of abnormal build costs, that viability is a challenge, and that the extent or the maximum extent of employment land has been provided on it, which makes the site development viable, which, picking up on the comments made by colleagues earlier, does return a profit, but it's the minimum profit necessary to ensure bank funding so that the development can go ahead. So from the outset, the development has been conceived around providing the maximum amount of employment land because it is a mixed-use employment, and that viability has been clear, therefore, that the open market or the housing part of the site cannot sustain the affordable.
Okay, sorry, if I can just follow up on that. Did the actually, it's difficult to word this, but it's the 106 agreements, obviously the payments are quite high per property on the, would a 106 agreement which was a lot less than that, would encourage you to put in affordable housing?
I think I'll make 2 points on that. Firstly, your officer, Mrs. Rehag's in the room, who's certainly far more of an expert in that than I, and I'm sure we'll be able to answer those questions for you now or in debate. And secondly, Mr. Kitchen mentioned earlier around the Section 106 package, where there's circa, I think it's a little less than £300,000 worth of contributions. A number of those are kind of mandatory expenditure in certain areas, and Mr. Kitchen would understand that better than I, such as biodiversity net gain. Things such as sport and recreation and the like are within the gift of the council, as I understand it, to decide where you would put those priorities. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ewing, if you have a question.
May I just ask you, quite a few of the properties have garages. Without considering the garages to be a parking space, as mentioned by the police in their comment on page 15, how many parking spaces are there for each property? So they're not parking on the roads, and particularly the larger houses.
Yeah, there's a policy, and I've forgotten the number. It might anyhow. There's a specific policy and guidance in your SPD on parking numbers, which we comply with entirely through the site, and it says that a 2-bed home and a 3-bed home must have a minimum of 2 parking spaces, and a 4-bed home must have a minimum of 3 parking spaces. And if they are to be included in a garage, those garages must be a minimum of 6.5 by 3.5 metres in size. Now, oversized garages is something that we've done for years, because we've found through experience on developments, if you provide a large garage not everybody, but a higher proportion of people use them, particularly with EV charging now. That's relevant because you need space in there to plug your cars in. So we provide oversized garages as a matter of course, but quite outwith of that, the parking space standards on there comply with the guidance in the SPD in terms of the minimum numbers, which is 3 for a 4-bed and above, 2 for a 2 and 3 bedroom home. But I'm sure, again, Mr. Kitchen could provide chapter and verse on that, should you wish. Yeah. Oh, sorry, and I should say, of course, there's also on-street parking available, which is not included in any of those calculations, because inevitably on a Sunday afternoon, when visitors come round, some people park on roads, but the compliance with policy is not based upon on-street parking. It's all based upon being within curtilage.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you've answered that one fully. Any more questions from anybody? Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much. Again, if you'd like to turn your microphone off and perhaps take it back with you and keep it safe until the next application. Thank you. And I would like to now invite Councillor Paul Ward from Tavistock Town Council to speak, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I recently attended 2 meetings of the Tavistock Neighbourhood Plan Strategy Working Party. These were public meetings and they were well attended by members of the public, and the 2 principal issues that the public talked about were somewhere to work and somewhere to live that they could afford. Town councillors are constantly hearing that same story. Now, we've talked about policy TTV 17 of the Joint Local Plan, and we've commented on that it contains 18,600 square metres of employment space, and that is in the order of. Now, I've done rather different sums to Mr. Weimer. This authority has admitted that the planning permission that's already been granted can only deliver 8,200 square metres of employment space, and the current application can deliver 2,500, although the way it was spoken of today, that sounds optimistic. Now, by my sums, that adds up to 10,700 square metres, leaving a deficit of 7,900. That's a 42% deficit. I leave it to members to decide whether that's in the order of or not. But would members please also remember that there are no other new employment allocations in Tavistock and only one existing one, which is Pixon Lane. It's been suggested that there are employment spaces elsewhere in the joint local plan area, but none of those are within 20 kilometres of Tavistock. And do you seriously expect our townsfolk to have to commute out of the town, turning this town into a dormitory? And do you seriously expect that they will use anything other than their private cars at a time of climate emergency and where we're trying to encourage sustainability? The Town Council deplores the failure to provide any affordable homes in this application or to make any financial contribution to affordable homes off-site. It is also bitterly disappointed that the proposed Section 106 agreement does not include any financial contribution to mainstream primary or secondary education or to the local town bus service.
£30.
Thank you. Members, it is for you to decide whether this application is in accordance with the joint local plan. The Town Council is of the opinion that it is not, and we are not persuaded that any adequate justification has been put forward for that departure. We also ask that this application be determined by elected members and not be delegated as recommended in the officer's report. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Members, do you have any questions for Councillor Ward? No, it appears not. Okay, thank you. If you again, if you take it with you and then you can use it for next time. Thank you. And final representation is from Councillor Adam Bridgewater, who is the ward member. So again, if you grab your microphone, and you do have 5 minutes as the ward member, rather than 3. Okay, so when you're ready, you make a start. I think you might need to bring the microphone down just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm obviously representing my ward members and residents here, so some of these are my opinions and some of them are theirs. This application does not provide the employment force base required by policies SPT4 and TTV17 and does not provide affordable housing. It is contrary to the joint local plan. The applicant does not give us a single reason why we should ignore the local plan, and so the Planning Act tells us that you should refuse permission. There are some worrying features in this application. For example, many Tavistock people and members have argued that the priority here is employment. Officers have dismissed this out of hand, saying 2 things. First, they say there is an over-allocation of employment land in the area. That is simply wrong. Policy SP24 of the Joint Local Plan sets the requirement for at least 375,000 square metres of employment in the plan area. It is simply not possible to over-allocate when the policy uses the words at least. The more land that is provided, the better, and that is exactly what the local plan inspectors have said. We are told there are plenty of places for Tavistock's folk in our town's new 3,000 residents to go to work. Places like Kingsbridge, Totnes, Salcombe. I can't stress highly enough that this is a massive breach of faith for Tavistock. The plan that you adopted in 2019 committed you to helping Tavistock and becoming more self-contained and sustainable, not to give people a round commute of between 40 and 130 kilometres a day. It is simply unsustainable. The applicant tries to persuade you that you need urgently to create more land for housing. The facts are you have far more than a 5-year supply of housing land in West Devon, and you've already given planning permission for over 1,300 homes, many more than the 1,200 allocated in the joint local plan. Officers have told the neighbourhood plan team that all of these permissions are live and will be built. In other words, it's evident there is no urgent need to provide yet more housing on this site. The priority is, as your local plan says, employment. Even worse, whilst promoting housing on the site allocated for employment, the applicants then tell us that it is not viable to create any affordable housing, let alone the 30% required by the joint local plan. Why would we members even think about approving an application that gives away employment land and doesn't get affordable housing for the people of Tavistock in return? Finally, we come to the amount of employment land in the application. Has that 2,500 square metres even been measured? We are told that 50 car parking spaces are perfectly adequate and in line with the joint local plan. However, officers have been told on a number of times that the standard set out in the SDP is a typing error and the actual parking requirement is over 80. All of this shows that it simply isn't possible to get 2,500 square metres on this site. We would be lucky to get half of that floor space. If you give permission for 2,500 square metres of floor space on the site with inadequate parking, then only one community will suffer: the people of Bishopsmead and the nearest area of street parking. May I remind us all that this time last year our Chief Legal Officer told us that the Leondon application would fall short of the local plan allocation by 10,000 square metres, and he was very clear that the shortfall will be made up on this site, the Bakerland. That was the position now, and as far as I'm aware, it remains the position today. Chair, I ask that you hold firm on the joint local plan on this site. This is a site allocated for housing and 18,600 square metres of employment. There are no material considerations that tell you should ignore the local plan by approving this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Does any members have any questions for Councillor Bridgewater? I do have one that I'm hoping you can answer. This is from your local knowledge more than anything else. Sports facilities in the Tavistock area currently, how would you say is there plenty of sports facilities, or is there a need for further sports facilities?
More an upgrade than most things. The cricket club has been there 150 years and is in desperate need of a new clubhouse. The rugby club has had a lot of money thrown at it recently, and the football club is going well. But obviously, with the minor sports, as I'd like to call them, they would probably come forward and want better facilities. So Tavistock does need still to upgrade those facilities, I think.
Okay, thank you. Members, do you have any questions, further questions? Councillor Enders.
Just a quick question about affordability and affordable housing. And taking my own area into consideration on this, are you being approached more by your residents for affordable housing? Are you finding that's the ongoing trend at the minute? Because I am just curious if it's the same in Tavistock.
Yes, very much so. It's affordable housing, and obviously, we need to have employment for people with all the new houses that are coming into Tavistock. We need that employment. We don't, as was said earlier on, we don't want to be a dormitory town for Plymouth. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and keep people here and the money in Tavistock.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Again, if you take your microphone with you, ready for phase 2 later on. Thank you. Right, I actually do have a question that's sort of come out of my thinking as the speakers have been speaking, which is, I'm not quite sure who would answer it though. Within the section 106, the recommendation that within the section 106 there is a sum of money that is within West Devon's gift regarding sports facilities, and I do understand that we could potentially, as a committee, put that to affordable housing instead. But looking at what 30% of the 44 would be, that's in the region of 14 houses. So my question is that what would that constitute it financially in terms of what would presumably need to be an off-site contribution? Is anybody able to answer that one?
Chair, I think I can, but can you clarify what you mean by what does it constitute financially? I'm not quite sure what you mean.
In other words, if within the application there was an affordable housing contribution, which would be 14 houses, financially, what would that mean? What sort of sum of money would we be talking about? Because there would be the potential, possibly, to maybe use that sports facility money if members were minded to do so into an off-site contribution. But would that be a meaningful contribution?
I can answer part of the question, and I will then defer to Mrs. Rayag for the second part. So, in terms of what would a total 30% off-site contribution be, I'll defer that to Mrs. Rayag in a second. In terms of the contributions that are in the heads of terms at the moment, I think the ones where members have some discretion as to what they should go to, what is the priority. I think there are 4 sums there. There's 96,500 that's for sports. There's just over 3,000 toward allotments. Then the ones that are probably a little bit more, I think they are in your gift, but probably a little bit more controversial would be the 22, just over 22,000 for education and the 22,000 for health. I think they're the ones that you could say, no, that affordable housing is a greater priority than those, and we'll seek to put part or all of that, which comes to about 144,734. I think you could say, no, affordable housing is more important, a greater priority to us than those contributions, and that should form an off-site contribution to affordable housing. I can answer that bit, but if I can ask Mrs. Rehag to deal with the other section. Oh, sorry, if I can just say that the other contributions, I think, are entirely necessary, completely necessary for the development, and without them, the development couldn't proceed for various reasons. So the highways, it's a safety issue. The contribution of the Tamar Valley EMS is to do with European habitats regulation. So it would be, if we didn't take that, that would then become, in my view, an unlawful development. So that's why I'm focusing on the 4 that I think are within the committee's gift, so to speak.
We're nearly afternoon, everyone, now, aren't we? We've gone past that morning time. Just to answer the Chair's question about the affordable housing contributions, we need to bear in mind that there is only a certain amount of money in that pot, which I think there's 2 figures, nearly 300,000. Some of it is needed for off-site construction works, etc. So I'm going to be quite blunt about this, but an affordable housing provision on site will be not really meaningful to me at all. It probably won't even equate to 1 unit when we start looking at what that would be. So I suppose that's where we are with that one at the moment.
Okay, so just to clarify, if you were talking about that all that 144 grand, that wouldn't equate to 1 unit for off-site.
For on-site, no, it would. We'd need to look at the transfer prices that RPs, our registered providers, pay us, and I couldn't just do that off the top of my head now, but I can say for certain it would not equate to a unit on-site for us.
No, I'm talking about off-site.
Off-site, yep. We could take an off-site contribution. I would be happy to sit and work that out. I can't do it right now, though, unfortunately.
I think my question would be, and I realise you may not be able to answer it, is would that 144 grand, and I think I probably know the answer, cover 14 homes, which would represent 30%?
No, but it could make a contribution to something that we that may need a financial contribution from the local authority in terms of some of our rural schemes, other projects that we've got coming forward. So it wouldn't be wasted, and it wouldn't be stiffed out.
Thank you. Okay, members, so moving on, unless anybody else has got any other questions. Nope, can't see any. Right, so if we move on to the next phase, which is moving the officer's recommendation, which is outlined on page 7, and this is to delegate approval to the head of development management in conjunction with the chairman to conditionally grant planning permission, subject to a section 106 legal obligation for the following, which is as described on. I'm not going to read all of those, but they're as described on page 8 and 9. Is there a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chairman. Oh, sorry.
Oh, hello. We've everybody's coming in here. Yeah. Mr. Fairbairn.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. There is the other additional contribution ahead of terms for the Section 106, which is the one that was agreed with the developer in respect of the employment land. And if that land were to be sold for more than £1, then there will be a review mechanism within the Section 106 agreement to ensure that the council received 50% of the uplift in value for use for affordable housing.
Thank you. So that would sit within the employment land element. Yes, sorry, I had written it down, but I'd written so much down I couldn't see it. So that is the proposal. Is there a seconder for that, please?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, we are now in debate. Who wishes to kick off? Councillor Moyes.
Yes, affordable housing. I can't quite work out why affordable housing is not viable in a large estate like this with expensive houses to sell, even with the contributions that are required. I know it's been viability tested. Do we need more houses in Tavistock of this quantity? They would not be affordable in any manner of the word affordable to young people, even when they're working and outside the affordable market. Lack of infrastructure in Tavistock. A386 is and has been for many, many years been too clogged up with cars during going to and from work times towards Plymouth. Sooner we have a railway, the better, I think. I think the junction onto the A386 is too close to the one onto Bishopsmead and looks to me to be dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Enders.
It sits very uncomfortably with me, this proposal. We went and we sat a week ago and had a meeting about affordable housing and our aspirations right the way across West Devon, and the fact that there is absolutely nothing on this whatsoever means that it sets my alarm bells ringing. I understand, as Mr. Weimer said, the contributions that the 106 contributions could be attributed to it. if we think that affordable housing is more of a priority. I don't think it's more of a priority. I think they're all priorities. And I look at the size of this, and I go back to something I said last week. You know, I sit on the National Park Committee looking at housing, and we have a 50% contribution of affordable housing across there. I think it's something that's why I asked the question of the councillor when he was stood there, because it's something that I'm being asked more and more and more now. People are more concerned about losing the youth, the people are moving away, and we've got to counter for that. I don't agree that we need more market value houses. I think we need more affordable, and for that very reason alone, ignoring the business land at the side of it, I don't think I can go with this one. My conscience won't allow me to do on this one. So I'm at this moment in time. I've seen, you know, I was open-minded about this. And I looked at it and I reread it and I thought, crikey, and then I waited to be persuaded, and then I listened to what the town council got to say. I listened to what the council's got to say, and I just feel no, not in this for me personally. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Leach.
Thank you. Coming from Oakhampton, I haven't lived this site and the problems around these applications like some of the local members have. But I am very concerned personally that trying to look at these sites individually, this particular application and one that's gone before, and trying to make sense of why there seems to be such a big decrease in employment land. And I'm not sure whether local members have been fully informed of how that came about, let alone the town council. The employment land, for me, is absolutely crucial for any town. Just using Oakhampton as an example, we had one big area there which seems to be, the employment side of it seems to be decreasing yearly. And it looks like it might be the same here in Tavistock. So that is a big concern to me. Housing, just looking at this application, we declared a housing crisis only a few weeks ago. Now we're looking at a site with no affordable housing whatsoever. So that is a big concern to me as well. I understand the actual site, the topography of this particular site is going to be difficult for anyone to develop it. It's going to be expensive, whether it's commercial or housing. So I understand as big as the question why it was put forward in the first place. But at the moment, I'm 50-50 on this one.
Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. This and the neighbouring site, while we're not considered it, has been on our radar for many, many years that I'm aware of, and I'm sure that several developers have taken a look at it and tried to work out how they can utilise the site and make best use of it. It does bother me that there is no affordable housing provision. However, there is a number of smaller units on the site which could feasibly be within the reach of some of the residents. It does concern me that there are issues over the employment space. That said, though, the officer in his report is able to give reasons and evidence as to why he has made the decision he has. And with some reservations for that reason, I will be supporting the officer recommendation.
Excuse me. Thank you. Anybody, any other members wish to? Councillor Pearce? Oh, Councillor Ewings.
I was hoping to go last as a ward member. I think this application is very difficult. The lack of affordable housing is one of my primary concerns. We desperately need housing in Tavistock, but not of this type of housing. Some bungalows, yes, but the two-bedroom bungalows in all likelihood will be going for about 300,000. I don't consider that to be affordable, and I don't think many of the residents of Tavistock would. There is a housing crisis that is looming in West Devon, and we talk about it as a council, that we need to look at this. That housing crisis is by the amount of people who are on our housing waiting lists for accommodation. Rented properties that were plentiful, particularly in Tavistock, because I know, I can't speak for the whole of West Devon, but they are being sold off or being used as Airbnbs. There is very limited rental property in Tavistock. So that has pushed the rental price up. For a two-bedroomed unit now, it is nearly £700 a month. That is not really affordable either. So we desperately need affordable homes in this area. I would have to take issue with Mrs. Rehag about if we took an off-site contribution. I think the Tavistock members would be very upset if it went towards rural housing schemes. We need the homes in Tavistock. The monies for the sports facility is also desperately needed. Councillor Bridgewater alluded to the cricket club and to the rugby club. The football club has its annual maintenance that it has to do, which costs in the region of 20,000. We also have the hockey club trying to set up again, and they are looking at monies. We then have the issues that we are all aware of antisocial behaviour in Tavistock. We are trying to get a new skate park because the one they have got has reached its end of life. So lesser sports or maybe activities need to be promoted for younger people. We need them. I also have a concern about the crossing by Bishopsmead from the unnamed lane and the access. There will be a lot of children going to school, and if they decide they're going to cross the road that way, you know, do they play chicken, as it's known as, to get across the road when that road is very, very busy coming into Tavistock for people coming to work, but also those leaving Tavistock to go to work the other way. You know, the bit as you walk down on the Plymouth Road doesn't have a pavement. So it would be encouraging young people to cross the road at a point which is not actually the safest. So I do have concerns about that. Even the education contribution that has been asked for is not for Tavistock. It's for Oakhampton, for their new special needs school, which I totally support and understand its need. But actually, we have needs in Tavistock as well for our schools, our primary school and our college. They need money, and this just isn't giving Tavistock money. And everyone's just saying, oh, Tavistock area or rural housing schemes. None of these are Tavistock. This application is in Tavistock, and we need the facilities that are sadly lacking in this application. So therefore, I will not be supporting it. The employment land isn't right, but Councillor Bridgewater talked extensively about it, as did Councillor Paul Ward. So I just cannot support this application. It is just beyond belief for Tavistock.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, did you want to come in?
Please. Thank you. This application raises a lot of issues, and unfortunately my maths is different to our head of planning. In my calculation, we're losing at least a third of the employment land that was designated in the joint local plan. The reason why we had significant amount of employment land in the former core strategy was because it was recognised with the development that had gone on over many years in Tavistock and West Devon that much of the employment was in the outer areas, in Plymouth and Ivy Bridge and also Launceston. It's amazing how many people used to travel to Launceston. And unfortunately, over the years, I know officers say, well, and some members have said, well, there's not been an interest in the employment land that's been on offer. But over many years, West Devon Borough Council has gained a reputation of being very unfriendly to business. And unfortunately, that continues to a lesser degree today. And we had an officer 4 or 5 years ago who recognised this and worked jolly hard to bring a significant business into Oakhampton. It was a great shame that he moved on, but I feel that we have to do more in encouraging business to come into West Devon, because otherwise we're just going to be lengthening the queues into Plymouth and Oakhampton for our residents. If we don't have businesses here who are paying good salaries and are welcomed into West Devon, and especially the Tavistock area, you know, as the ward member said, Tavistock will end up a dormitory town. And we don't want to see that. You know, over the years, Tavistock has been a very thriving economy, and we want to retain that. The other issue is people will say, well, now a lot of companies are encouraging their staff to work from home. Now, I've chatted to a number of people who've been working from home during the pandemic, and those that are living on their own have found it very difficult. And I believe that this has increased the mental health issues that we have in this country, because a lot of people who are working from home, who are living on their own, are missing the social interaction. And we are going to need, once we get through this pandemic in years to come, we are going to need this employment space provided. And we build on it now at our peril, I think. So therefore, allied to the fact that there's no affordable housing, I mean, most of these properties here will not go to West Devon people. I know that the officer said, Phil Baker said that, you know, people will be moving because they've already got a job here. But these properties won't, we all know what bungalows are making in West Devon now. You're looking around about between 350 and 450,000. Local people can't afford that. So, you know, this is totally alien, and I cannot see that this development brings any benefit to Tavistock. The 106 monies that are provided are statutory requirements if this development goes ahead. There's very little that's going to benefit the West Devon or people of Tavistock and Tavistock Town. So therefore, unfortunately, as you all know, I normally support officers in their recommendation. And I feel that Mr. Kitchen has been given a hospital pass in having to deal with this application. And I've, you know, my sympathies to him, but I cannot support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more for any more? Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair.